This is Great Lean Leaders, Making the Business Case. I'm Dr. Shannon Flummerfeld. I'm pleased to have with me today one of my dear friends is a lean leader, Dr. J.J. Villarreal. He's the superintendent of Rockwall, Texas Independent Schools, and he's here today to share with us his insights on lean leadership. Welcome, J.J. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Flummerfeld, and thank you for what you do for growing leadership in multiple organizations, including working with myself. So we appreciate you.
Absolutely. You're certainly welcome. So we want to hear a little bit about you, in your current position as superintendent. Can you tell us how long you've been in the position and what led you into the actual superintendency?
Well, thanks, Dr. Flummerfeld. Love public education. I think when I was 12 years old at my middle school, we had a coach that I think I was struggling with whether or not I wanted to be in track. I got so nervous before I ran in track, and he would say, I thought about quitting, and he said, JJ, if you quit this, wouldn't you want to say in life you never quit anything you started? And I've always remembered that, and his influence on me and among other teachers that are so great in public education led me to want to give back the same confidence that was given to me. And so I've been in public education serving students of all ages and of all different needs for 32 years. It has been a blessing and an honor to serve people. And again, 32 years from being a teacher in English to a coach in football and baseball to a counselor, P through Z, alpha-based counselor, and then moving into an elementary principal role, to a secondary high school principal role, to an assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, and now the superintendent of a great district, Rockwall ISD, climbing in 19,000 students and 23 schools. Very honored to work with such great people in public education, and again, continue to see the lives of others get better.
That's great. So, I mean, you've come a long way from being that track and field team participant there over that career in 32 years, and the progress you've made through all of that. Would you say? I mean, you mentioned your views on this as a servant leader and how it's an honor to serve and to help students and those in your school district. But could you tell us? Is there something that really makes you tick as a leader of Rockwall, as a lean leader? Is there anything in particular that is compelling for you and that drives you?
I think what drives me the most is to see others achieve their dreams and achieve their goals. We have been very fortunate to have leaders who have learned on our team that are out serving at higher levels in other districts now in the state of Texas. And it's just, I'm very, very happy to be a part of that journey for them, just like others have helped me climb to where I am today. And so my personal mission statement is to love people and to help them achieve their dreams. And when we're able to do that, we sell hope. And when we see people achieve that, that's the giant trophy for me, watching people smile and be delighted, so to speak.
Wonderful. That's really great. So you've done some remarkable things in your tenure there as superintendent at Rockwall. Can you tell us about the lean journey that Rockwall has been on, as an organization? Why did it start? How is it going? What's working well for you? I know you've gotten a lot of notoriety with the achievements and accomplishments that you've been able to generate. So can you help us to understand from an organizational perspective what that lean journey looks like?
Yeah, happy to do that. By way of background, lean leaders are all learners, and we continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, but we're never satisfied. We're always looking for ways to improve. But my journey actually started in Temple ISD. I spent 17 years in Temple ISD, and I don't know if I naturally had a need to eliminate waste, but I watched public education always work high in the pedagogical area of thinking on what we can do, and staff go to conferences and come back with these ideas, and then we buy stuff. And I never understood what we were fixing if we didn't talk about the problem first. And so I've always had a management style that says, fewer words, simplicity is respect, and how do you match 50% of the pedagogy to solve a problem with your doing? And if you can't do that, then we're not showing respect to the employee. I love the professional learning communities. I trained with Dufour and love what was happening there. But if you go into a PLC without a set agenda that's going to solve the problems that are going to happen along the way, and you have different problems in public education in the fall than you do the spring, you should have effort to try to eliminate the waste, because time is something we can never get back, that has a specific agenda for that PLC that adds value to the organization. So it's a 2.0 of the PLC process for me. It's more of learning about delighting everyone, understanding their needs, and simplifying the process. So learned that in Temple, had a huge increase in scores once we created processes there. I went to Carroll ISD, spent both great districts, honored to be there. 85% free and reduced lunch in Temple, all the way to 1% in Carroll ISD. But a value could still be attained. We can always get better for our families and our kids. And then now in Rockwell ISD, being the superintendent, I get to move a little faster in some of the ideas that we practice. So in Rockwell ISD, our journey started out with a curriculum that was built for the state of Texas. And like many districts, people would purchase this curriculum. They deploy it to their staff, but most of the curriculum's already written. And one of my philosophies is to grow the knowledge to empower employees to do better at their work. And so if somebody's already written the curriculum that is for the state of Texas, there's so many variables here when you look at Rockwell ISD students and what their academic need is. And so if you don't target the instruction to be to the needs of your district, and you're doing something that's written for the state, you're still creating waste in the organization. The other challenge for me is to make sure that, while we could still pay you the same, we could still make you smarter about your work. And what happens when you become knowledgeable at a deep level about your work, not only does it help get a better product for our customer that's in the classroom, the student, but it also helps our internal customer, the teacher, be empowered. And when that empowerment occurs, all of a sudden, when we look at processes, teachers are adding a higher level of value to the process, eliminating that waste, getting more to the target condition, and it becomes who we are. And so we built our system for the brand new teacher coming into Rockwell ISD. Usually the first or second week of school, they're in their car, they're so behind, in tears, because everybody else knows that's from here what we do. And what we wanted to do is design a system that builds confidence from the beginning. So everything in our organization is a flipped leadership model where we work our way from the leadership in my team up to the teachers, not down. And so our staff, they're not in their offices, they're at the campuses. They're looking anywhere they can look to find to add value and working with the staff to build capacity. Along the way, I've always wanted to have a lean school. And what better to do lean than in a career technology education program? When you look at manufacturers, you talk to people out in the business world, they're looking for soft skills. But what I'm hearing today is they're looking for people that can problem solve and actually have experiences that match the pedagogy or of the work. And so listening to all that, our project-based learning is really A3 learning. We use the lean management tool for that. We teach that to our 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders. Our kids over time learn before we start spending our time working. We always want to know what problem we're solving. A problem agreement starts with respect, and then we work backwards from there. And to see kids do that, and to have Lean Learning Day and A3 presentations to our business communities, to have internships with our kids in the business world, with our Chamber of Commerce and a partnership there, to have our teachers go out to our Chamber of Commerce members and learn what's actually happening in the field. All that tightens up what we're doing academically for our kids. So I went to lean in career technology education. I'll go back to how did we embed or begin the lean journey in Rockwall, I think lean and lean management also teaches you the difference between a push and a pull. And I learned along the way that you have to create pull for people to learn more about why change is necessary. And we don't even use the word change anymore. It's just who we are if you're a lean leader. So that, I mean, we don't even talk about change. We just change. That's we're working. And so that being said, the first year was going out and talking to teachers. I went to 23, or well, not then, not back then. We built 5 campuses since then, but I went to my campus. I sat during lunch with all the teachers for an hour and a half times the number of elementaries, the number of middle school, the number of high schools, and all our other alternative schools. And I sat with the teacher and asked 3 questions. What's great about your school? What's one thing that if you had a choice that you could fix? And if you had 3 wishes, what would they be? And then we took that list times the number of campuses we had. We have over 2,000 employees. And I actually took all those hours, put that together in a SWOT analysis, and we started delivering. I think one of the first ways to build trust is to see somebody's ideas actually get implemented. And so when I found an idea, we implemented those ideas. I go back to the campus and go, see, we listened. And you create that pattern where people do feel valued. That helped when we started coming into, hey, we need to think about writing our own district internal curriculum that's aligned with the state of Texas, but meets the needs of our kids. Because in Rockwell ISD, the one thing I learned right off the bat is our kids can learn at higher levels. Our special education kids, our emergent bilingual kids, and the general population kids. We everyone can learn at higher levels. And so we started looking at that, and we had advanced kids that were being successful in a general education 5th grade math class, and 50% of those kids could have been in an accelerated math. 50, maybe some of those kids could actually skip 5th grade and go into 6th grade math. And so a year later, problem agreement, we created a math pathway for the on-level college-ready math for 5th graders. We did a compacted math where we had 5th graders take half of 5th grade standards from the state in math, and then half of 6th grade. So that was our compacted math. And then if you tested well, then we advanced you all the way to 6th grade math. And then you were receiving that instruction. Today, now, I have 1,500 6th graders, and of the 1,500, over 51% are all taking some level of advanced academic coursework. And so stretching folks appropriately so they can learn at higher levels is something we just really have enjoyed. So those are some ideas on how we've gone about doing that. I can give you other examples. I think Dr. Flummerfelt, you and I worked with probably 9 groups of staff, filled up our professional development room, and we pretty much wanted to create a pool on improvement on curriculum. And we asked a simple question. Each of you are in a group, and we would like you to process map everything you ask a teacher to do to write a simple lesson plan. 3 hours later, we realized maybe half the groups finished, and they never even had a chance to speak on or present the process map they created for teachers to create lesson plans for 1 week. And the comment from leadership that was new to me at that time, because I was new, is we recognize that we're not doing what we need to be doing. What do we need to do? And the first move was, we'll keep doing not right. We've got to get ourselves right before we can get our downstream right. And that's where the journey began. And I'm so proud of our staff. I'm so proud of our school board. I'm proud of our community who embraced the challenge of really excellence in education.
Yeah, that's a very, very exciting description of what's been going on there with, like you say, when change becomes a part of the DNA, and it isn't a big deal in terms of this is new to us. It's a very familiar routine, and the collaboration and trust that you build is also, a basis for that. So when you think about your own journey as a lean leader, um, what are some key things that happened that really relate to you now as a lean leader that helped to lay that foundation? Are there a couple of key events? Maybe they were opportunities, maybe they were chances to problem solve. I mean, you just described an aha moment you had when we did that workshop with your instructional team, and how profound that has been in terms of carrying forward the work of lean within the district. But for you, as just, individually, were there a few things that were particularly meaningful for you and provided an impetus to take the next step along the lean leadership path?
Well, there's so many steps there. I remember meeting in Temple with a physician who was in charge of the Texas A&M residency for doctors at Scott and White Hospital. We were actually meeting to talk about a new program for our Sunday school, and I told him I was struggling in just doing what everybody else is doing, which I wanted to do research on PLCs and how to bring better value. And I'll never forget, he said, "I'll be right back." I mean, I know exactly where we were. He walks out to the car and he said, I want you to read the Toyota Way Field book. And I want you to read this book right here and translate it and think about what it would look like in public education." And I did. I read every word of Liker's work, and I started translating terminology in Toyota to what that would look like in public education to make it something that could be done. And I did not realize people didn't know this in public education. And I know this is growing, and we hope by the time this gets out, people will learn more about it. But the principles that you gain from lean, the questions in your head to ask because you're a lean thinker, it gives you context on how to address the most complex issues. Um, and I'm not saying stress goes away, but it does minimizes stress because you feel empowered about how to think about waste elimination, how to think about how will this meet respect for people principles. What is the actual process? Well, what problem are we solving? What is the customer looking for? Some people don't even think about the customer as much as they think they're the customer. And just flipping some of these humility leadership principles to think about others really helps to get to solutions in a faster way. And then from there, that's the reactive part, right? Because you are catching problems as they come. And that's what happens in public ed. We catch them as they come. It teaches you to be proactive on those problems. You start hearing those voices of problems that could come if you don't think this way. And so you're always trying to stay in front, 6 months in front, watching other districts, learning whatever it might be, and working backwards from there. So you continue to always work to put a smile on the face of everyone. In my context, it's a three-legged stool. It's the school board in education. It's my teachers in education, or our teachers in education, and then it's our community in education. And we want to delight all three of those areas. And there are times when, there are problems that need to be solved in one leg of the stool or both legs of the stool or three legs of the stool, but you don't want to lose any of that support. And so I always think in terms of those are my customers and how can we deliver for them.
Yeah, that's great. And just as a point of clarification here for our listeners, the term PLC stands for Professional Learning Communities, and it is a collaborative approach to school-based problem solving and team-based work. And it may seem kind of obvious, but there's a lot of organizations where the culture of team-based work is not necessarily ingrained in the way the organization is set up or the way the culture is driven. And so I just wanted to clarify that. You mentioned Dufour, who is one of the key founders of the PLC movement, or professional learning communities movement for education. Well, that's very, very interesting. So I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned the very kind doctor who shared this initial book, the Toyota Way with you. And it was just, light bulbs went off. It was so enlightening for you. So how do you feel about what is the importance of mentoring and being mentored in the work that you do and in the teams that you lead, your three-legged stool of customers and so on? Can you talk with us about like the importance of that or an impact of that or not in your career success?
Can you, that
The men
question is,
yeah. Yeah, so I'm asking you about I'm trying to understand, mentoring for you,
sure, sure,
what
sure.
role did that play? And then how do you feel also about, mentoring others? And then, is that how does that translate in the work that you do?
Sure, sure. So being mentored, I'm so fortunate to have people in my life that helped me get better. And I think it's important for everyone to have someone that can grow their capacity. In my position, the circle of trust and being able to speak 100% about situations or problems that could be confidential. To be able to bounce those ideas off, not necessarily the actual details of those issues, but how to solve those problems, step process wise. I love that. And I've been humble enough as a former coach to always know I can always learn, be a learner. I mean, imagine that in public education. It's the foundation of who we all need to be as far as helping other people grow. I really try to think about how I can be a positive influence for everyone. That means you have to know your people and know their goals and needs, and that they're seen. And I think when you build the foundation of that relationship, I think they come to you with their dreams and ideas. And when those occur, I always want somebody ready to hear me. I always want somebody ready to be influenced. I don't want to push any influence on them. But I've found so many people because of the relationships we do have, they're able to share their goals with me, and um, I give them an opportunity to create a pathway to that. And I'm very fortunate they would let me do that. So um, overall, the way the system's set up in Rockwell ISD, everyone's going to grow. There are controls built in. Learning is who we are. Our curriculum, I have 350 staff members who write the curriculum, who create the pool within their campuses because they wrote it. And then the state is always adjusting and always changing. Today, this is great, but next year it's not. I'm sure everybody experiences that. So your system has to be designed to change and to be paying attention. And so we have a district that learns, so to speak, like that. And I think everybody's able to be mentored by everybody when they see the scores here or what this other district's doing here, or they're looking at student data here. So everything's influenced because we're always trying to strive for perfection in what we do for kids.
That's great. And, just that mantra of learning, being a learner, being a learning organization, the idea that part of that means there's going to be some tugs and pulls and change that has to take place. It's great. You've got confidence in that, and your people do as well, and at Rockwall, and all your customers do. I've spent a lot of time in your organization, JJ, and know how effective that mantra has been for you. So I can see it serves you well. So I want to just ask you about sort of the scope and sequence of your own lean leadership journey. Would you characterize that journey as sort of like, oh, there was a moment in time when, oh, okay, I can see I need to move in this direction and embrace this? Or was it more of a gradual process? Can you, describe that to us in broad terms, how that worked for you? Everyone's different. It's just interesting
Mm.
to hear how people get into lean and then lean leadership.
Yeah, I'll start off with an example. When I was in Temple, I was reading the Toyota Way Field book, and I was also a member of our Chamber of Commerce. Always have been a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I always have wanted to help our community, partner with the business community. It all fits with public ed. That's the end for our kids too: college readiness, workforce readiness, military readiness. And I remember meeting a gentleman who ran an organization that made great value trash bags in Temple, Texas. And he invited me to his manufacturing plant. At that time, I was also reading Ken Pandy's book about Motorola and their Six Sigma journey. And so I was telling him, building a relationship, you always try to talk about some things that people are going to know. And we were talking. I said, "Yeah, I'm reading about Six Sigma," and he just literally looked at me and he says, "JJ, Six Sigma is like a fancy car you only drive on Sundays with the top down." He said, "Something that you can use every day is lean." I'm like, "What is lean?" And he said, "I want you to come to my manufacturing plant." So I did. I got so much out of that that I took what we call instructional coaches in Temple ISD. We have them here in Rockwall. They're experts in math, they're experts in reading, and they train teachers to build their capacity at the campus level. We invest in that. And so I took all the instructional coaches, maybe 16 or so at that time, maybe 18, and we went to the manufacturing plant and we went to cell number one. And in cell number one, they took resin off of the train. They moved these little pellets of resin into a hopper and they melted it down. On cell work number two, sheets would start to be rolled and developed. Cell number three, they would start cutting. And I'm not sure if it was in that order, but my point is they had metrics up in their area to show if they were on time with their work for the next shift. They had metrics for if a cell wasn't working properly, they stopped. And that's where it caught me. It's like, wait a minute. If you have error in cell number two, that means cell number 10 that's boxing trash bags up has to stop too, because you have to fix the error, or if not, or the error, if not, you're delivering a defect. Now, well, how many first graders do we have that aren't reading at grade level? Why are they not reading at grade level? And how do we stop as educators, recognize this problem? And how do we create leader standard work that would close the gap on that student's learning, so we would not be sending them to the next grade level at a deeper whole nother level for their learning to the next grade level? And if you did that at every grade level, think about all the defects you're creating if you're not correcting those issues along the way in a 13 grade level system. And so that's how detailed we got in that one example. And it really blew the instructional coaches away to think deeper about problems in kids. So that was one example of along the way how lean came to me. When you first hear about um, Tim Wu Do and waste elimination. You'll need to read Dr. Flonerfeld's book, by the way, if you want to know what Tim Wu Do is. But when you learn about waste elimination, overproduction, unevenness of work, we see that all the time with, let's say, some of our staff in special education and all they have to do. How do we level some of the work for them? I always say around here, everybody's hair should be messy equally before you go home. So job descriptions are important. You value that most of the waste in an organization comes from people really not knowing their role. And if you do good job descriptions and respect them and say, if you do this part in the organization, you're going to be successful. You're just eliminating waste doing that. Waste elimination, ask you, the 5 whys. Why do you need to be doing this? What value is it adding? There are some things in the community that are just embraced, and you might want to be careful not changing some of those traditions. But most of the time, we're always asking why we're doing a process and what are we fixing by doing that. And so you get thrown at you all of these terms, all of these ways of thinking, eliminating waste and delivering perfection and zero sum thinking and all kinds and then all of a sudden it just starts clicking like hitting a golf ball. I mean, I remember buying garage sale golf clubs when I was in high school because I couldn't afford them, and I'll go to the park and I think I broke the first one because I had too much rust on the shaft, and I got another club, didn't even know what it was. And man, I hit a good golf ball, and that I didn't even hardly feel it. And that's what happens when you keep learning along the lean journey. You end up thinking in alignment to eliminating waste with smiles on the customer and all that you do. And that's hard to do in public education, but I think it's a worthwhile effort, especially with the complexities that we have in our world today.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. There's a lot of gems in that explanation that you gave. So I want to start to focus on you mentioned the pedagogical framework against, against making sure that it actually works in the school system. But I want to focus on your philosophies of lean. And, you've mentioned some things like learning, commitment to learning and improvement and the ability to pivot or be agile. Are there any other key lean leadership philosophies that you adhere to and that, that work well for you there in Rockwell? And I understand, a lot of times you have to look at both the context and the climate and the culture as you're making these selections, because, there's a lot of stuff out there as a leader to pick from. Most of it runs fairly parallel if it's, successful. But in lean leadership, we do have some really specific philosophies. Is there anything else you'd like to mention in addition to what you've already described?
Um, I mean, I have a lot really. Some key principles that we expect from those in leadership in Rockwell ISD. You have to lead without judgment and blame. What makes that makes it a different challenge for a leader if a problem occurs. Problems are gold nuggets for improvement. And so the judgment and blame is not tolerated in the organization. What is questions and questions and more questions to make sure you get to capacity and you bring others along with you. Harmony in Rockwell ISD is expected. Like any organization, when it's disharmonious, it disrupts flow, the flow of instruction, the flow of what we should be doing for kids. So for us, we don't let disharmonious uh, behavior go unaddressed, where we have conversations about how we can get back to flow. And if you don't do that over time, it's hard to have change in a place that tolerates at least not having a conversation about how we can get to a better place of problem solving than negative talk, things like that. But from a leadership standpoint, we want to build trust. We try to our leaders, at least they don't show it around me. It was somebody's fault. It's all of our responsibilities, and so we try to push that really really hard. Um, um, Other principles are really, if our principals don't tell people exactly how to do their work, they're disrespecting them. And one of the things we do with our principals, we ask, I'm going to go into one of your teacher's classrooms and I'm going to ask your teacher about you as the principal. And I'm going to ask them one question. Define success if you were successful for your principal. And if they can't answer that, then you have a system that doesn't know what the deliverables are. And that question alone can eliminate a ton of waste if you are specific about their roles. When I'm dealing with a parent that has a challenge or a concern, I always let them speak. And then I say, before I speak, ma'am, can you tell me if I get 100 on my response, what would that look like for you? And then I try to work backwards for that. Sometimes people don't know what their 100 is. But oftentimes I would just like to know what folks would need to be happy. So that's a big deal in our organization. We try not to plan too much, but we try to be deep and rich in everything we do. That's another standard and principle that we have. We don't think in public school for us, we don't think in terms of 5 years. I know there are 5 years strategic plans. We have one as well. But I read a book by Bobby Bowden, who does a strategic plan. And I remember Coach Bowden said, well, if you don't do the first 2 years right, you're not here for 3, 4, and 5. And so we think of school as a 10-month project from August to right around the end of May is a 10-month project. And I'm an old coach, so there are 4 quarters in football. So the first quarter of that 10-month project in school, we're focused on certain things. The next quarter, we're focused on certain things. And the next quarter, we're focused on certain things. And then the final quarter, we're focused on certain things. And what are we not going to do during the first quarter in fall? For example, in the fall, we're going to benchmark all of our kids. We're going to know exactly where they are so we can understand if we are growing our kids at the appropriate rate for the middle of the year assessment. or our KPIs, whatever you want to call that. So we can identify teachers that might have needs where we can send our instructional coaches to go help them. And so during that time, you're going to have staff developments that are going to occur to improve the craft of the work because we're identifying students and their needs. By the time we get to the second quarter and we're looking at middle of the year benchmarks, now we're kind of in 5S land. We're straightening up those scores. We're sorting, we're straightening. We're going to shine a new process that will impact the kids specifically to their standard need, those standards the state expects us to teach. And then we're going to shine that process. If it's not going well, then we're going to adjust that process. And then once we find a process that's working, we're going to shine it all the way through the third quarter. Now, when we get to the third quarter, that's after the holiday break, and we come back in January through February, we're getting closer and closer to the state's high stakes tests. So what you don't do during that time is you don't pull teachers out during professional development. You give them the respect of their classroom time with their kids because the days are fewer before you take the Texas high stakes test. And so, like I said, we start working in January on the next year's staff development because we know the needs of our kids from the fall. We deploy our staff development for the summer right at the beginning of the fourth quarter so staff can plan their getaways. And we don't want them working in the summer. We want them enjoying their families unless they want to do summer school. But we think in terms of chunks when it comes to adding value for our teachers so they can add value for kids.
Oh, that's really great. And as you were describing some of these philosophies that you use there at Rockwall, you mentioned several tools. You talked about 5S, which is a standardization and sustainability tool. You've mentioned 5Ys earlier. There's, so many tools in the toolkit of Lean, and they're there, for you to use in an adaptive situational way. But for you as a Lean leader, are there particular, maybe what we would call go-to tools that work really well for you? Is there anything in particular of that Lean toolkit? And you've received your black belt. So you're very familiar with, most of those Lean tools. But is there anything that's like your go-to tool or maybe a couple of them that you'd like to describe to us?
Yeah, I would encourage any learner of Lean to master the A3 thinking model. You have complex issues, whether it's enrollment growth in Texas like we're facing, whether it's a change to the state expectations on curriculum, the change in accountability, the growth in students who have special education or 504 services needs. There's so many complex issues that have to be solved that require, efficiency with taxpayer dollars being spent on those problems. So you can't go into those with, I think this will work. You got to go in there with a really well thought out solution. Bottom line is public educators are always going to have problems. So how you go about solving those problems is through the A3 process. And when in my early years of Lean, I would write those out. I would take apart the entire problem, and then I would try to decide what the problem is and put it on a one sheet of paper. And then I would write a descriptive about that problem and what it meant. So when I'm talking and I say, hey, team, we have a problem, no, everybody can read my interpretation of the problem. And then my team would say, might add a little bit of value in that description of the problem so we could frame that problem well. In my E3, we always look at what are other people doing times 5. That's a role. So if you want to make a change to a program, well, who's winning with that particular change times 5? And then we learn more about what they're doing. If they're doing something that we're doing, but they're doing a little more, we'll do a gap analysis on, hey, here's the excellence that we've seen from these 5 school districts. We're doing most of them except for these 3 pieces. If we do this, this would improve our system and solve the problem. So we do gap analysis as well. We also do the voice of the customer because the last thing the school superintendent wants to do is make a decision on what an 11th grade English teacher should be doing. They are the ones closest to value, and value is our students. So we've got to have a VOC done with them, a voice of the customer, if the problem relates to that particular area or whoever the circle is that's involved in that area. The voice of the customer is essential. We include that in our notes as well. And then we try to determine what a future state would look like. And once we determine that, it's a plan, do, check, act process. We put who's going to do what by this timeline, and along the way, we'll uncover problems. And when we do that, I mean, that might not be something that's a part of this particular project, but we'll list those problems at the end of our A3s. We have our deliverables, our current state and future state is done, and then it has a timeline on it, and then we go from there. When I did that early, writing these down, including CTE courses that were being offered, who was offering, who was doing it well, all those kind of things. As an example, you get to a point when you do these over and over again, that's just how you think.
Yeah.
So most
Yeah.
of my staff knows when they come in with a problem, I'm going to go through the A3 mental model
Yeah.
just by what I just said with you sitting in front of me. And so now my team, they will plan before they meet with me. They don't tell me this, but I've heard they do this because they know he's going to go through the A3 thinking cycle.
Yeah.
So we need to do it too. And I'm really proud to say that I don't know a lot of school districts who have done this, but we have double-digit people who are either green belts or black belts in our district for the first time. We're going to continue to explore and grow this, but I'm watching them run, and they are running with efficiencies, with knowing who the customer is and problem solving well as we are about to open up two ninth grade centers in Rockwell ISD due to growth.
Yeah, no, that's very exciting. And you know, the fact that you know the teamwork and the understanding, right, to create what you know what we would call in lean is a kata, right, a routine or a kata around when they come in and meet with you, they know the routine. So now you know they can prepare for that. You've got it. There's not that guessing game. You know, a lot of times you go in and meet with the CEO or executive leadership superintendent, and you don't really know, okay, where's this going to go? But it's great there's not that waste and that tension in terms of that. So you know sometimes leaders are very hesitant to put the time and effort into the A3 thinking, continuous improvement thinking, you know, what we know as the plan, do, check, adjust cycle. And so I just want to ask you, is the time that you put into that worth the effort? I mean, there's a trade-off. You know, you work differently. It's more front-loaded to be proactive. You know, I mean, is that all worth the time and effort? What kind of a argument could you make for the decisions around the use of the A3?
Well, it's a simple quote that my team has heard me say. An ounce of prevention, time and effort in A3 thinking is worth a pound in cure.
Yeah.
Because if you miss, then it could be costly. It could be a negative impact on a school or the school district or people in general. And so when you're at this level of fully respecting the opportunities that you do have as a leader, you want to take those to a whole nother level of being responsible. And I think while it sounds like a lot of work to go through an A3 process, time and effort, it's a lot easier to get that right than it is to work backwards from a problem that you could have spent a little bit more time on. So um, it's just part of what we do, to be quite honest with you, with my cabinet and how they solve problems.
That's great. So, you know, we talked briefly earlier about strategic planning and how far ahead, you know, you can do that planning and how you chunk the academic year into the 4 quarters and so on. Um, so when we think about strategic planning in lean, we include management with it. So it's not just doing the plan and putting it on the shelf, but then, you know, we manage to that. So your KPIs, you know, all of those benchmarks or whatever you might have, you're managing to that plan on a daily basis. And then, you know, you're using true north or what your organization's really about. And that whole body of work is what we call Hoshin Conry in lean leadership. So could you talk with us about how you actually use Hoshin Conry or parts of it, and what that has done in terms of creating maybe more clarity, or how you handle that whole protocol of Hoshin Conry strategic planning and management.
Sure. In 2016, I arrived in Rockwall, and they had just passed the 2015 bond. That was a project that would add a career center and some elementary schools. Um, we had COVID. We had been planning since 2018, the 2021 bond, in order to add elementary campuses as well, along with another middle school, some renovations to middle schools, and then two ninth grade centers because we have 3,000 kids at both of our high schools right now. So we're in the process doing that. Currently, the district, because of our fast growth, we are working on a November potential. Hopefully, when this comes out, we were successful, but it's up to the taxpayers. But we're working on another bond to address growth. Long story short, our Hoshin prior to the 21 bond and this current bond, we take our team, we get away, we study the SWOT, we do a SWOT analysis. I mean, it's as simple of, all right, I want you to think of every problem you can think of in your area, put it on a Post-it note, bring it over to the wall, and then we're gonna sort your themes and your topics, and then put those into a SWOT analysis. And then we look at demographic update, we look at the current other districts around us and the state funding and what we can do for our kids to address the growth that's coming to us during that ocean. But we will look at those that add value with limited effort and limited dollars. We're gonna knock those out first. We'll look at improvement processes or solutions that they may cost more and they may cost more time, but maybe they're at level 2 on how we're going to address those problems and solutions to add values. And then some of the most complex things like, you can't build a $110 million building in Texas. They don't give you money for that. You have to go ask for bonds to do that. That's something that's going to take longer, but add value. That could be a level 3, so to speak. So during the Hoshin, we get together, we identify problems, and then we create some kind of draft plan that will address some of these problems in the future.
Okay, that's great. You had also mentioned on a more of a daily work effort, the use of 5S. Can you explain to us, how 5S works for you, and maybe give us an example of how it was used to sustain the improvement work that you've done in a particular area?
Sure. Let's say a high school in the state of Texas, the high school is going to have a high stakes test for grade 9, 10, and 11. They'll involve English to biology to social studies. You've got Algebra 1 in there as well. And the state's always changing their curriculum. We catch a curveball here and there. We thought you wanted it this way, now you wanted it this way, kind of thing. And then, they test our kids, and they will put a grade on your school district here in Texas. When a new principal comes on board and they have 3,000 kids, okay, I've got 3,000 kids. Well, what do I start doing with three? Well, you've got your 9th, 10th, 11th graders. Now you want to look at your 9th graders. You want to sort them academically to see how they're doing, and do your predictions on where they would be if the test was today, based on your benchmarks and baselines and things like that. And then you want to identify the type of courses and classes that you're offering in order to address those problems you identified, like I talked about earlier in a beginning of the year assessment. So as you sort, you straighten, you shine, you're shining these processes up so you can create that leader standard work. We have a 19% turnover rate this year. With the current teacher market and job market, it's very competitive because there's a teacher shortage in Texas. In the past, it's averaged about 13%. We're still lower in the state at 19. The state right now currently is at 21%. So can you imagine losing 21% of your business workforce every year in the state of Texas? Or for us, 19% in our system will come and go to retirement because you have a lot of people that are able to do that in public education, but not enough coming in to replace them. You've got to create a learning system that takes 19% of your staff, then brings them up to the speed of a 10-year experienced teacher in a short amount of time. So the work you're going to do with them, you're going to sort that work as well, so they can reasonably process that along the way. So 5S for us is more of a mental model on how we address problems to make it doable, as opposed to looking at everything as a whole and saying, oh no, I have 225 new teachers, where do I start? And okay, and then you fill their brain the first 5 days of school, and then I see you, maybe at Thanksgiving or something like that. So we all that is how you sort your professional development with teachers. We try to strategically do that based on what they're addressing on their pacing guide or their timeline of where they are in the school year. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah.
that's
No, I think
that's an
those
example.
are actually two good examples of 5S where, how do you, as a new principal or instructional leader, how do you walk into a building and start doing the work effectively? Well, you have to do some, sorting and setting and shining and so on to look at those student groups. And then basically the same thing with how are you addressing professional development? Because, many schools get very low marks on the effectiveness of professional development. So when you apply a 5S to that, now you're really trying to meet people's needs. I mean, teachers, you hear all the time, I had to sit through 2 hours of a professional development. It has nothing to do with what I do. We just had to all go
Right.
in full building. Not that some of those might not be worthwhile, they may be, but there's no 5S around that. And so then, there's no sustaining, because as soon as you're done, you're watching the clock and leaving. So I think those are two great examples. So when you reflect on in this round one, JJ, of your leadership practice, would you say that you've done lean leadership enough that you have things fairly well systematized, or actually 5S? I mean, you mentioned the protocol that you use, with meetings, and you've obviously got these tools and thinking routines deployed. But for you, as you enter your daily routine, how 5S or systematized are you about the way that you approach your work?
So public education is different than delivering a product.
Mhm,
I gave the example of manufacturing trash bags. I mean, we don't manufacture anything. We create leader standard work or processes that help a student read.
mhm,
I like to say that if you could get the visual of a track and 8 runners are on the line to run 100 meters, and when the gun goes off, the visual would be 8 runners are running towards the finish line, not at the same time, they stagger, things like that. To get to the finish line, that's a typical product, a trash bag being made and goes into a box, and you hit the line, who's first, whatever. In public education, when you have 8 kids about to run 100 meters and the gun goes off for them to run, you'll have kids that'll go backwards. You'll have kids that'll go get a soda water or a Coke over in the concession stand. You'll have some that will just look up, and you'll have some that'll keep sprinting. And for us, we take you from where you are and make you better. That's our goal. Our goal is for every kiddo to learn at higher levels. And therefore, you have to create different systems. You have to recognize their needs and create their own particular system to be able to do that. And do that with all the legal requirements that the state and federal government has. And also you have to do that with 19% turnover rate as an example,
mhm,
different families moving into your district that may not know how you do things there. And there's just so many different variables that make it a challenge to create flow. But where you can create flow, it sure does help
mhm.
that chaos. If you have leader standard work in the classrooms, you know what to do with certain types of student and their needs. If you're teaching no judgment, no blame, if you're practicing respect for people, you're also respecting the parents, and you're respecting the community's needs. And I think when you bring all that in together, you're never going to get away from chaos in public education because it's always changing. But what you can do is create an environment that's reasonably simple enough in a complex. I mean, it's hard to even say the word simple in public ed, but that's the goal, to simplify the work for a third grade teacher so they can go be at home with their families in the evening. That's what we want to try to do. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think lean is different than the business world, but there are practical things you can implement that would create flow and harmony to address the problems we're all facing.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you answered the question. I was just looking for the thinking that you put into the work that you are leading and overseeing and facilitating there in Rockwall. Well, JJ, this has been very helpful. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the discussion that we've had today? We'll come back and do a second round with you and pick up the thread of conversation. But is there anything that you'd like to add or clarify from what we've discussed today?
Sure. The what I would say is about lean. Once you know the I talked about no judgment, no blame. I talked about harmony. This is not easy work. This is work that builds your capacity along the way with a team of people building capacity, where we can all look and see what we've done together to help others. I say that to say that it is a journey of work. It is a pattern of work at a very intense level because you are learning intensely, but the deliverables and what it does for you in your organization, I would say it's definitely the hope that is missing for those that are in chaos every day in public education. So I would highly encourage people to learn more about lean management practices. I will share that Rockwell ISD, we serve almost 19,000 students now. I have other districts that have almost the same amount of students, have almost the same amount of, let's say, um, uh, free and reduced lunch percentages, special education and 504 student percentages, things like that. We are able to serve our students with comparably less staff at a less dollar amount than other districts who have more money and more staff. And our staff is doing a phenomenal job of delivering excellence. I appreciate it when they find an area that where we can improve, but the staff has done a phenomenal job through this journey of being efficient with the taxpayer dollars and delivering excellence. We have the lowest tax rate around right now. To a point, happy about that, but also concerned about future salaries for teachers in this current market. We love them and we want them to keep delivering for our kids. So I would just say one of the benefits also is efficiencies.
And I think that's great. That's a great summarizing comment for our round one today, because, we're trying to make the business case. Like, why does it make sense to do this? As you said, it's a hard journey. And what are the risks versus the rewards in doing that? So thank you for laying that out. I appreciate you being here today. We'll talk again soon. Dr. JJ Villarreal, everyone, Superintendent of Rockwall ISD.
Been a pleasure.